Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you for being here. And I'm going to ask everyone to mute their microphone. And then when it's a writer's turn, they will be able to unmute, which would be amazing. Um, so we'll get started in just a minute while we wait for everybody to join us. But it's so nice to see so many people. Thank you for coming out to support these really incredibly talented writers. And I think you're going to just be delighted with what you hear today. I am Lynne Golodner, and I am going to jump in and get started. I might be letting people in as we continue to go, but welcome everyone to the virtual launch of Gathered Words. I'll show you my copy right here. It's an anthology from the writers community, which is a program that I created a few years ago. I said I'm Lynne Golodner. I am the founder and instructor of the writers community, which grew out of my creative writing classes. And there were so many amazing people who had taken some of my classes, and they wanted to continue working together. So I created this program for ongoing connection. It's a place to deepen individual creativity and build your writing skills, but also build community around this craft. It's now my favorite program to teach, and we have a lot of the same people returning year after year, which is really, really special. This is the first anthology that I've produced from this program, and it was open to all participants, past and present. In 2021, I created a publishing imprint called Scotia Road Books, which is an independent publishing house for writers with strong voices. I myself am the author of 12 books, 8 of which were published traditionally, and the last 4 I published through Scotia Road Books to have greater creative control. I have a great team of editors and designers, and it was really great fun to produce this anthology. Didn't feel like work at all. I did it mainly to celebrate all of you, and you'll see why very shortly. But I love this project so much that now I'm considering producing another anthology and opening it to a wider submission base because there are so many talented writers, and it builds a sense of community to be in a shared project like this. If you haven't already obtained your copy and you want to, and of course, no pressure, no obligation, I'm putting one link in the chat. You can order that in digital or paperback. It's available in paperback wherever books are sold online, and it's exclusively an ebook on Kindle for now, but in a few months, we're probably going to open it up to a wider audience, and you'll be able to order it on other digital book channels. So again, thank you so much for being here today to celebrate these incredible writers. And now let's hear from them. That's why you guys are here. So what will happen is each contributor will read an excerpt from one of their pieces in the anthology. If you have questions, please put them in the chat and I'll be able to ask them either as we go or at the end. And a recording of this program will be available tomorrow for everyone who registered for this event. It'll be on YouTube and you can share it as widely as you want to bring these voices into the bigger world. So now let's begin. And again, if you could just mute all your microphones so we don't hear anybody. And then when it's your turn as a writer to read, you can just unmute. So let's begin with Alyssa Musso. Alyssa is a scientist by trade and a creative at heart. When she is not working full-time as a toxicologist, she enjoys writing fiction as well as some shorter creative nonfiction pieces. Alyssa's story, Fractured Time, is a chilling piece of short fiction that evokes her love of suspenseful storytelling. Alyssa, take it away.
Thank you so much, Lynn. And I'm going to apologize ahead of time because I'm super congested, so hopefully I can make it through the 3 minutes of reading. So I'll start just from, a section of my short story, Fractured Time. A child's squeal of excitement wafts through the air as snow flurries glimmer against the soft gray sky. In the distance, a boy chases a blur of pink. His small body gallops through the powdery snow, his feet landing on fragile ground. Brayden! But the wind howls, and the snow quickly becomes an opaque cloak, hiding another world. Marcy bolts upright, her chest heaving. She jumps from the couch and runs to the door, leading to the backyard. Brayden. The cold sears her lungs, her breath crystallizing in front of her as she steps outside. Brayden. Her limbs and chest burn with urgency as she stumbles through the drifts. She can't She can't find her son's small footprints in blowing snow. Marcy pushes forward, shielding her eyes from the blinding sheet of white as snow freezes to her eyelashes. A gust unsteadies her, but she holds herself upright. A burst of color breaks through the white. Marcy's heart tight threatens to shatter in the bitter cold. As she reaches for the small pink object, the wind tugs it free, pulling it further, taunting Marcy in the game of deception. She follows, grabbing at it with numbed fingers, but it disappears in the squall. She trips, falling to her knees. In a whirl of white, she can only see a glimpse of pink a few feet ahead. As she summons her strength to stand, a sudden shift seizes her muscles. Her body recognizes her mistake. The wind whips, and the snow dances in front of her. Her breath escapes in desperate puffs as she accepts her fate. The crack and crunch beneath her give way to a dark abyss, a crushing weight so great the air is sucked from her lungs. Marcy kicks and flails. One last glance towards the white, a spot of pink, one that could never be reached. As Marcy closes her eyes, a feeble voice echoes from the depths. Let go. And she is ready. She is ready to give in to the unrelenting wrench of guilt, to free herself from the shackles of grief.
Lovely, Alyssa. That was beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Next up, we have Jeannie Dome. Jeannie writes under the pseudonym Anne Goth. Her short story, Tegwin, am I pronouncing that correctly, Jeannie? Tegwin? Yeah?
Yes, you are.
Awesome. Tegwin, A Most Unusual Maid, combines fairy tale and magical realism into a lyrical story. So, Jeannie, let's hear from you.
Thank you, Lynn. So I am going to start reading on page 2 of my story, not right at the beginning. Um, Tegwin followed the footman to the queen's chambers. Without meeting her eyes, he opened the door and took his post. She walked inside. Candle flames danced. Tight curtains enveloped the room in shadows. Her Majesty wore a silk robe trimmed in ermine. The hair on Tegwin's neck rose. You're a new chambermaid. Tegwin curtsied. Yes, Your Majesty. And you have caught Mrs. Allen's attention. She said that earlier your appearance changed by magic. Tegwin kept her eyes down. Speak up. I haven't time to dally. Do you have powers or was Mrs. Allen mistaken? Mrs. Allen was correct. I have powers. Where do they come from? Magic might come from an internal or external source, Your Majesty. Mine is internal. It flows in my body like blood. The queen put a finger under Tegwin's chin and forced her gaze up. Tegwin saw beady eyes, a long hooked nose, a mole on the queen's chin, brown and bulbous and sprouting hair. Tegwin resisted the urge to turn away. You're quite lovely. Queen Ardita released Tegwin's chin. Tell me why you're a lowly servant. My mother passed 3 months ago, Your Majesty. We had no money. The opportunity to work in your household is a blessing. In that case, it's only fair that you repay me. I'll not order your death if you give me your beauty. I beg your pardon, Your Majesty. Your green eyes, black hair, rosy skin. Ardita paused. You have no need for such traits, but I do. King Reginier visits tomorrow. We'll begin now. Tegwin's eyes fell on a pitcher and mug. Your Majesty, please sit at the vanity. I will pour wine for us to share. You must put your lips on the mug where mine were to help the magic flow between us. Quickly. Tegwin poured wine and sipped. The queen also sipped, careful where she placed her lips. Tegwin bent so the mirror reflected both women. She closed her eyes and spoke to her magic. I need you. The familiar tingling took hold, so strong this time it sucked the breath from her lungs. Colors flashed behind her eyes. She murmured an incantation, emphasizing the words beautiful and Her Majesty. The rush of magic stopped, retreating to its secret place. The floor dipped. Tegwin grabbed a chair for support. When her eyes focused, she saw what the queen saw. Silky red hair spilled over the monarch's shoulders. Her cheeks glowed, her lips looked ripe as peaches. Long lashes framed her eyes, and the mole was gone. Queen Ardita hadn't changed enough to be unrecognizable, but she certainly looked more pleasing than she had moments earlier. My gracious, the queen whispered. Her hand quivered as she touched her face. The king will be astounded. The sovereign's eyes narrowed. I'm beautiful and you're vile. You fool. You should have chosen death instead.
Thank you. Lovely.
Thank you.
All right, our next reader is Barb Summers. Barb is a writer who grew up in rural Ontario, Canada, and she now lives in a small town outside Toronto with her husband and son. Barb's short fiction, What She Was, is a story about a girl listening to the admonitions of adults to all of their detriment. Barb, take it away.
Thank you. Okay, this is just a very short piece and just a little short sample of it. Stand still, the mother said, smoothing the girl's savage hair that was as dark as the earth after a storm. The girl did not like to stand still. The girl liked to run. The girl liked to imagine herself as a wave on the ocean, racing, then crashing and exploding in a glorious spray. The girl would leap into her mother's arms, and the mother would oof and fall back on her heels and say that it's not ladylike to run in such a manner. The mother liked the girl to have neat ponytails and clean, shiny shoes. The mother liked for the girl to sit with ankles crossed and hands folded on her lap while politely listening to the teacher and following the rules. The mother knew that a good girl grows into a woman who finds a good man to marry and has her own good children. The father liked the girl to hold his hand and sit quietly beside him at church on Sunday. It made him feel like a good father. No one saw the empties in the recycling bin or on his computer's browser viewing history. Being seen as a good father got him recognized by his boss and promoted, making him a powerful, respected man. The girl knew nothing of being good. She only knew what she was, the fastest girl in her class and the best tree climber, going higher than the other kids who were afraid. She was smart. She knew where to look when the class's aquatic turtle escaped. She carried him back from the cafeteria, even though he bit her twice. The teacher called the girl audacious and told her parents she had a strong character. So her parents were worried. The mother and father asked the girl to sit and listen. They tried to explain the parts and pieces of a girl and how, when assembled correctly, a good girl was made. They explained how good girls have good lives with happy parents. It was what they called a win-win situation. The world is changing, they said with somber voices. Life is confusing, but it doesn't have to be, not for us. The girl saw the earnestness on her parents' faces, saw their clutched hands and pleading eyes, and she heard the whispers from the wind telling her to run, run, run.
Thank you, Barb. Wonderful. Our next reader is Anita John. Anita lives in the Scottish borders in Scotland and writes theater scripts, poetry, and short fiction. Anita has two pieces in the anthology, and so can you tell us just a little bit about which one you're going to read, Anita, before you jump into it?
Yes, so I'm going to read my poem 16. And this poem was written when my son was 16, my youngest son. And we were going through a fairly difficult situation where we were not communicating and we were having long periods of silence. And then we had this occasion. It's set in the Scottish borders in the landscape where I live. So there's some references to the Scottish borders. And there's also a word in there which is the word burn, which actually is a Scottish word that means a small river or stream. Just in case you're confused by that word. So this is 16. There was that day in May during study leave when you asked if we'd like to go for a walk. We packed cheese and ham sandwiches, 3 oranges, some chocolate, and flasks of water and juice. We'd walked these fields for more than 16 years, and yet you showed us your own path from Kitlinau to Carlops. We skirted Mill House, climbed Patey's Hill, and watched the view steadily open. Lammermuirs and Moorfoots to the southeast, Pentlands firmly under our feet. You asked why the earth was spherical and whether there was an easy explanation for gravity, then turned like the wheeling gulls to trace the line you'd taken winter sledging, the place you'd bailed out where hill plunged to burn and fence wire. You explained the qualities of snow, how jump skis differ from slalom skis, how, come winter, you'd travel to France, train as a ski instructor. We settled back in the wind-blown grasses, absorbed the rare and sun-soaked afternoon, listened to meadow pipits, crows, gulls, the whisper of water under the bridge. Your voice danced, light as the orange-tipped butterfly newly emerged, making us forget the journey's doubt, uniting mother and father with their last-born child, their late-born boy. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Next, we have Carol Rohrig. Carol grew up in rural Wisconsin, where she learned to love simple living. She was a successful entrepreneur and now writes essays and short fiction from Texas and Colorado. Carol's short fiction, Unlocked Secrets, is a poignant story about love, family, and small town living. Carol.
Thank you, Lynn. Unlocked Secrets, the beginning of the story is where I'll start. Marianne idled her dented Chevrolet in front of a Victorian house set in the middle of an expansive lawn and hovering oak trees. She verified the address on the deed in her hand. The estate attorney had known nothing about this document found in her mother's safe deposit box. She drove around the mailbox and followed the gravel driveway to a parking area. Why did her mother have the deed for this place? 5 white rocking chairs lined the porch below flowering baskets of geraniums and petunias. Marianne clapped the brass knocker against the front door. Hearing nothing, she waited a moment, then banged harder. The sheer curtain was pulled aside in the adjacent window. Then, with a clatter of keys and locks turning, the door opened. "May I help you?" A stocky woman dressed in black and white greeted her. "I'm Marianne Holman. My mother, Ruth Holman, had the deed for this property in her safe deposit box." "I'm so sorry for the loss of your mother," the woman replied. "Father Richard from St. Ignatius notified me of her passing. Please come in. I'm Sister Anna. Can I get you coffee or tea?" "Thank you. A glass of water would be nice." "Have a seat." Sister Anna motioned to a dark green velvet settee outlined in carved mahogany. Marianne surveyed the room. Framed oil landscapes on the wall, a dining table surrounded by high-backed chairs, a crystal vase with freshly cut daisies on the coffee table. Sister Anna walked with a hobble on her right side. She set a mason jar filled with ice water in front of Marianne and sat across from her. "How did you know my mother?" "I met her 50 years ago at St. Ignatius," the nun said. "I taught school there before moving here." Marianne leaned in. "Why did my mother have this deed?" "Well, that's a long story. We ran into some financial difficulty, and your mom came to our rescue." "Who's we?" "My order, the Sisters of the Holy Trinity. We started this home for unwed mothers 70 years ago." There was a silence before Marianne spoke again. "But how did my mother know about this place?" Sister Anna smiled softly. "Your mother found us not because she wanted to, but she needed to. In her day, women who became pregnant outside of marriage were scorned. Many blamed the young woman for being irresponsible. Ruth came here to give birth to you."
What a great way to stop. Thank you, Carol. Next up, we have Mandy Prell. Mandy lives in Louisville, Kentucky, with her husband and 2 daughters. In her writing, she explores the female body, sexuality, motherhood, marriage, and faith through a feminist lens. Mandy has 2 poems in this anthology, and could you let us know which one you're going to read and tell us a little about it before you?
Yes, I'll be reading an excerpt from her sex life in 5 sentences. Sorry, Mom, who's on this call. But her sex life in 5 sentences. Everything melts together in a pleasant and familiar way, but he is her family now, not her lover. She wants a rising feral madness palpitating in her chest. She wants to feel the heat of his boiling blood, enraged and unleashed at the sight of her bare inner thighs, as if her legs are a feast for his consumption. And you can read more and my other piece in the anthology.
Oh, okay, nice little taste. So I'm sure we'll all want to see what happens next. Thank you, Mandy. Next up, we have Dina Staples. Dina is a wife and mother living on a small island off the coast of Maine, where she teaches second grade. Dina has 2 poems in this anthology. And Dina, can you tell us a little bit about which one you're going to read before you jump in? Dina, do I see you? Dina. Okay, we will come back to Dina. So then next we will have Lynne. Lynne grew up in China and came to the United States in her 20s. She lives in New York City. Lynne's essay, A Solo Traveler, conveys her joie de vivre over meeting people and visiting new places. Lynne.
Thank you. I'll be reading the beginning, middle, and the end. On a crisp fall morning 2 years ago, I was journaling in the garden of a museum on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. The leaves were falling, the ground was a mosaic of red, orange, and yellow, and the sky was as clean and blue as a baby blanket. But inside me swirled a torrent of fear and anxiety. In the middle of a divorce, I was afraid of living alone, making decisions on my own, and desperate to feel loved. Writing became my daily therapy. Within my sightline, a family of 4 were looking for a table. I gave mine to them. I took a smaller one. Their sons, a few years older than my teenage boys were at that time, pulled out a deck of cards and started playing with their parents, chatting in a language I couldn't discern. My eyes grew misty. A family activity so small, calm, and ordinary was absent from my life. Curiosity overtook emotion. I asked, "What language do you speak?" Middle part. A week later, Lynne, the mom, texts me, "If you ever come to Denmark, we have an extra room for you." I stare at the screen, all tears. At the most painful time of my life, my heart longed for generosity, tenderness, and affection. When romantic love ended, another kind of love for myself and human connection, started taking hold. 1.5 years after I met the Danish family in New York, my plane touched down in a small airport I never heard of. Lynne was waiting, shorter than I remembered. She had the same half-moon smile. "Oh, the teachers in my school think I'm crazy picking up a woman from New York City to stay with us," she joked. "My friends think I'm crazy too," I replied. "But I would never done this if a guy had invited me, no matter how hot he is." The end.
Thank you, Lynne. Oh,
No.
sorry. Go ahead. Go.
I marveled at the magic of nature, of random encounters, and of the curious ways we bumped into each other's lives. Humans are wired to connect, to love and be loved. On that cool morning in New York City 2 years ago, I felt fear and longing. Now that fear is washing away, I feel young again, full of joy, love, and adventure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, next up we have Jane McCauley. Based in Minneapolis, Jane is a re-emerging writer after a hiatus to raise a family and explore the world. Jane's piece, Taking Measure, is an unusually structured story about preparing for an adventure on Mount Everest. Jane?
My voice, I have bad allergies, so it could sound somewhere between Ariana Grande and Lauren Bacall. We never know. Kathmandu, almost dusk, mountain peaks puncture the sky. The sunset, a raucous blast of pink, orange, yellow, then purple, ready to shift to night. I am tall here, even taller than some buildings. The earth rumbles and bricks fall into the street. Eating dinner, I hold my plate as it rocks back and forth on the table. People die, 3 that I know of. Lukla Airport. One guy threw up and another screamed. He thought we'd run into the side of the mountain. He must have watched the catalog of crashes on YouTube. Maybe the other guy drank tap water. or ate street food. I once argued with an engineer. He asked me how I could get on an airplane if I don't know how it works. I go with the odds, I said. And by the way, fuck off. Goats everywhere. Hiking. Feet hurt, toes crushed, body creaks, need oil. A happy tent, shuffling sleeping bags, quiet snores, whispered conversation, dogs barking. At 15,000 feet, it's snowing. I wear a hat and gloves in my sleeping bag. I have to pee, but hold it. Gokyo Peak. An icy 2 a.m. On the mountain, I see a line of headlamps. We are not first, and we are not last. Finding footing in the dark. I smile, I force a smile and feel better. Hours of silence. Finally, a light in the distance, sun rising. We all gasp for air. Near the top. No, there's another top, and another, and another. My feet are clubs of ice. My legs are wood. Only my upper body has joints.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jane.
Mhm.
How many times have you climbed Everest?
Oh, no, I've been to that region many times. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
Cool.
Not multiple.
At the end of this, we will have time for questions. So as you guys are hearing these pieces, if you'd like to know anything from the writers, definitely save your questions. We will have a little bit of time left at the end. So next up, we have Kira Olara. Kira is a writer and home cook based in Huntington Woods, Michigan. Kira's essay, Marché Saint-Martin, is one of her gorgeous food and table stories about a market in Paris. Kira.
Thank you, Lynn. I'm going to read from kind of the middle portion of this essay for a little bit. On my first walkthrough, I was overwhelmed by the vivid colors, scents of overripe vegetables, and din of chatter from the high ceilings, with no premonition that by the end of the year, I'd be a regular. Another year after that, I'd be asked by the cheese man for tips on local apartment hunting. I had recently spent a summer in northern Ghana, and as I stood in the stone archway of this Parisian space, with lights, running water, ice, and more, I was struck by the memory of the markets of Tamale in all their bustle and dust. It was September, so the last of the summer fruits were still on display. Ripe figs, deep red raspberries, and golden Mirabelle plums. Everyone was catching up on August holiday adventures. C'était bien le sud, vous y pensez. I'm not a quiet person, but I was nearly church-like in my reveries. Everywhere I turned, there was something beautiful and delicious. Melons that fit in my hand, not at all the giant cantaloupes I knew from Midwest farmers. Flat fish the size of a dinner plate, eyes nearly following me around in its freshness. C'est quoi ça? And on to the butcher, land of lapin, where it would be nearly a year before I gathered the courage to order by myself. I practiced the phrasing of my order over and over as the line moved forward, palms sweating like 8th grade math class all over again. Because I was too afraid to order, I decided that the butcher fancied Guillaume and not me, blaming it on not knowing the French cuts of meat. The vegetable guys were my people. I knew their language, tomate, chou-fleur, roquette. They were gentle cabbages of men, speaking softly to their lettuces. Thank you.
Lovely. If you want to hear more of Kira's beautiful voice, she narrated 2 of my novels, Woman of Valor and Cave of Secrets, and she'll be doing more. So love listening to you. Thank you, Kira.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Maureen Shea. Maureen grew up in Latin America and now lives in New Orleans, where she was a professor of Latin American literature. Maureen's essay, Colorado, Here We Come, is a journey story featuring escapades with her sister in their youth. Maureen.
Thank you, Lynn. This story takes place in the 70s when my sister Regina, my dog Lupo, and I hitchhiked from Rockville, Maryland over to Fort Collins, Colorado. We had just had a bad ride, we'd gotten robbed, and we were waiting for the next one. So that's the part I'll read. We were still in a rotten mood in mid-afternoon when a small red convertible pulled over and we met Sun, Moon, and Meadow. The 3 were sitting in the front and their back seat was covered with luggage. So I thanked them and told them there was no way we could all fit, especially with Lupo. On the contrary, they said, we stopped because we felt sorry for the dog. So we'll make room.
Meadow and Moon got out to move the luggage around, which only left one open spot on the back seat that they assigned to Lupo. Reggie and I were told to climb onto the luggage and hang on. I had serious doubts about this, but with no better options in sight, we all squeezed in, Lupo having the best seat by far. He curled up contentedly. Our bad mood from earlier forgotten, Reggie and I grinned at each other as we sat on top of suitcases, leaning forward to grab hold of the seatbelts, hanging on awkwardly. We had already noticed how scantily dressed they were. Meadow and Sun were only wearing tiny bathing suits that barely covered their genitals. Moon had on a halter top and bikini bottoms. It turned out that even that flimsy attire bothered them because, as they explained, they were nudists. As a matter of fact, they were heading to their nudist colony outside of Denver, and they hoped we'd go with them. Before we took off, they shared the pipe they were smoking, and for a while, it was a lot of fun. That's all.
Awesome. Maureen has lots of essays like this that hopefully will be coming out in a book, right? We're putting those together as a collection. So
We'll see.
a really fun journey. Awesome. All right, next up we have Eileen Fitzmaurice. Based in New Jersey, Eileen is a former ESL instructor and magazine editor who now works for a New York City university. Eileen has 2 pieces in this anthology, so Eileen, let us know which one you're going to read an excerpt from and just tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. Thanks, Lynn. So I'll be reading from an essay called Rubber Time, Bali, May 1998. It basically chronicles a very bad breakup, which happened in Bali during a time of political unrest. So this is after we realize the relationship is over and we're getting ready to head home. I apologized to Ruth and Liam and said my goodbyes. Then Josh and I walked in silence to the bungalow on the other side of the island. I climbed up the wooden ladder to a bedroom under the thatched roof. I needed to lay my head down for a while after all the drama. Suddenly, a piercing sound blasted from a loudspeaker next to the bungalows, followed by a voice shouting in Indonesian. It took me a minute to realize there was a mosque behind the resort, and they were announcing the first call to prayer for the day, Allah. It was 6 a.m., and since I was too worked up to rest, I decided to check in with my mom before our long journey home. Oh, I'm so glad you called. My mother sounded like she was about to cry. Are you okay? Yeah, why? She was always worried, but her tone was especially urgent. Because Indonesia is all over the news. There are riots and fires and mobs and people running through the streets. I looked around at the tranquil village of bungalows. The only sounds were a chorus of frogs and the clicking of a gecko. Nope, no riots here. Well, be careful and get home safe, she cautioned. I love you. Love you too, Mom. I'll call you when I land in New York. The next morning at 8 a.m., we boarded the small boat back to the mainland. Josh felt like a stranger sitting beside me. In these last 10 days, I realized he didn't love me at all. He loved love and some idea of me he'd conjured in his head of the woman he thought I was. I knew I'd never live up to that image, and the realization that I didn't love him either smacked me in the face like heavy rain. Staring at the shrinking island through the morning mist, I remembered the Indonesian expression I learned one day while waiting over an hour for our snorkeling instructor. Jam karet, our guide said, watching my distressed look as I repeatedly checked my watch. It means rubber time. Everything here is very relaxed, ma'am. Time is not fixed. It's as malleable as the waves crashing on the beach and the sand that pulls back into the sea. Your time is better spent waiting patiently than wasted in anger. At that moment, I thought about all the time I had wasted in this toxic relationship and the time it would take for us to get back to our real lives in the US and sort this out. Time spent traveling to Indonesia with a germaphobe whose idea of cultural immersion was staying in a 5-star hotel and watching a perfectly choreographed barong dance. Josh feared situations he could not control, and as soon as he got out of his comfort zone, his true self came out. Or maybe that was just the person I had chosen to ignore all along. I craved a more easygoing and open-minded partner who embraced adventure. I wanted a man whose passport was full. Josh had barely left the US. We taxied from Padang Bai to the Bali airport in Denpasar. We're not even out of Indonesia yet, I thought. Only 21 more hours to go. Great. Little did I know the real struggle was ahead. As it turns out, my mother's worrying was warranted.
Thank you, Eileen. Next up, we have Maggie Organ. Maggie is a writer, sommelier, and mother of two from Texas. Maggie has 2 pieces in this anthology, so please tell us a little bit about which one you're reading before you jump in.
Sure. I will be reading from the project today. It's a short story about modern motherhood of small children and the utter chaotic banality of that, and how it might push someone to some extreme thoughts, maybe. Okay, the project. 5:42 a.m. Katie cradled a warm mug of coffee in her hands and blinked at the sudden brightness of her computer. Screw whoever said the best time to work was before everyone else was awake. But they weren't wrong, were they? When else would she have time to focus on this project? She couldn't work on it yesterday because it was Wednesday, and while Wednesdays weren't as crazy as they used to be, ever since she'd pulled her middle child, Gracie, out of gymnastics, there was still soccer for her oldest, Sammy, manhandling the other 2 kids on the sidelines, and the mad dash home afterwards for dinner and bath time. So it must have been Tuesday that she'd last looked at it. But that can't be right, because Tuesday Tyler, her youngest, required extra attention, as he was still coughing everywhere except into his elbow. Although at only 2 years old, could she really blame him when his 35-year-old dad still couldn't remember to wash his hands after he took a shit? All that to say, it had been more than 2 days since she'd last worked on it, which might as well be 2 years with how well her brain retained things these days, like a colander holding water. She sipped her coffee. Focus. Open the anonymous browser. What was next on the checklist? Reviews. She needed to read reviews. It wasn't enough anymore to go in blind on a purchase, especially one this important. No, she had to look at the reviews so she knew what she was getting, unlike marriage. There were no reviews she could have read before her wedding, at least not for the groom. Should she start a load of laundry? If she started now, she could switch it over when the kids were getting ready for school, and then start the next load, and the next, and the next, and the next, until all the clothes were clean and all she had to do was fold and put everything away. But all of the kids' hampers were in their rooms. Wouldn't waking them up to get their laundry sort of defeat the purpose of this early morning work session? Should she risk trying to get her and Mike's hamper from their room? Sure, if it was their toddler screaming bloody murder in the middle of the night, he couldn't be bothered. But he'd wake up as soon as she opened their door. No, the laundry could wait. The letters on the screen blurred together. What had she been reading? She rubbed her eyes and read again. Better. Sort of. It was hard to see because she was sitting in a dark room looking at a dark screen with blinding white letters on it. That couldn't be good for her eyes, or anyone's. Didn't doctors say looking at screens all the time was scrambling their brains? They're probably right. They were doctors, after all. She should limit Tyler's screen time more. He's watched at least one movie every day since the start of the school year, when the 2 older kids stopped providing entertainment, or at least a distraction, during the day. Summers with 3 kids at home all day, with the cost of summer camp, who could afford to send them anywhere, were hard, but being home alone with the toddler during the school year was harder. No matter how each day started, trip to the park, library story time, arts and crafts project, she would eventually give in. Let him watch a video on her phone, play a game on the iPad, park him in front of a TV movie. Screens were easier than starring in a one-woman show. Staying home with your kid. And why should she be the only one who took her job seriously anyway? But sure, she should probably work on limiting screen time. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Was that Murphy pawing at the bedroom door? That damn dog better not wake up Mike, or else she really would leave him by the side of the road this time. Sure, it had been her idea to rescue him in the first place. It's good for kids to have a pet. They can learn about responsibility and the cycle of life. But now he was just one more creature she had to pick up after. That was probably too harsh. She loved Murphy and his crooked little ears, but really, she should let him out of the room before he woke Mike. She couldn't deal with her husband yet, even if this project was all about him.
Awesome. Thank you, Maggie. Wonderful. Next up, we have Claire Newman. Claire is a writer and corgi lover who lives in Dallas. Claire's essay, One Scene, Four Perspectives, is a lovely way to inhabit various perspectives in one setting. Claire.
Thanks, Lynn. So as the title indicates, this is a scene. It's a small fish pond from four different perspectives, from the human, the fish, the lily pad, and water. And I'll read from the middle of the essay from the fish's perspective. It's usually peaceful here until early evening when the dog begins to bark and the human makes a shadow. I recognize her and nearly always emerge from my hiding place under the bridge, below the waterfall rocks, or beneath the lily pads. Hiding is safest for myself and others. I had a large companion here a few years ago. The humans wondered where he went. He was just here yesterday. Where'd he go? They asked for a while. Only I know what happened. It's best to hide. But I'm willing to emerge for her because from time to time she throws food flakes in the water up by the waterfall. I swim the length of the pond slowly and calmly, but when the food comes, I whip my tail back and forth purposefully and pass the others and arrive first. Flakes drop to the water's surface. The scent of squid, dried squid, and shrimp meal is strong in my nostrils. My gills flare with excitement, but I move cautiously before I eat. The debris on the surface, there's debris on the surface, blossoms from the redbud tree, bits of leaf from the live oak, elm pollen. They all look alike from below, especially when I'm hungry. I test the surface layer with my burbles, rejecting anything that is not supper. When I find the flakes, I open my lips just above the surface and devour whatever I find. Oh, how divine. The others know to stay out of my way when I am there, and the other one aims for the same bit of food. If they haven't learned the lesson by now, I remind them of bumping them with my snout or swimming over them. I inhale the feast while my smaller cousins flock to the pond's edge where the current has distributed bits of fare in the reeds. Finished, I search for more, still not satisfied. I hoist myself up on partially on the water on the lily pads, searching for flakes. I find a few. The lily pad submerges under the weight, and the remaining particles drift away into the current. With an aggressive flip of my tail, I roll off my lily perch and swim to the far end of the pond, waiting for the current flakes I have set free to float towards me. Those green barriers help block food from heading downstream too quickly and into the filter, but they crowd the pond and get in the way of my lap swimming. They are large and succulent now. I nibble at the leaf's edge and savor the delicate taste of the plant. I find them more appetizing, though, in August, so I wait then to munch more aggressively. I dive to the deepest part of the pond, nearly 3 feet below the surface. The water is cold, and I am satisfied for now.
Thank you so much, Claire.
Thanks.
Our next writer is Bonnie Jeslow Payne. Bonnie enjoyed a nonprofit marketing and fundraising career and has been writing like a fiend since retiring earlier this year. Bonnie's essay, The Dress, details the search for her wedding dress. It is part of a memoir she is writing about losing her husband at a young age and building a life for herself after this loss. Bonnie.
Thank you, Lynn. This is an excerpt from my piece, so there's pieces in the beginning, the middle, and the end. What was I doing going to a bridal shop to look for a wedding gown at 44 and never married? My twin sister Barbara and I strode into the bridal shop. Mom wasn't able to join us. My dad had been diagnosed with esophageal cancer, and Mom didn't want to leave him alone. Dad seemed to be getting weaker. Steve and I were to be married in September, and it worried me to see him looking so frail. We browsed through the rack of gowns. The dress I chose was a beautiful princess-style silk with a sparkling crystal-embellished bodice and a chapel-length train flowing to the floor. I twirled around on the platform. I couldn't wait to walk down the aisle. Spring became summer, and my dad was declining before my eyes. He became increasingly frail and slept frequently. One day, Steve said, "How about we go down to the courthouse and get our marriage license?" We stopped by my mom and dad's house that afternoon. "Judy, Don," Steve said, "we would like to get married here on Saturday evening if that would be okay with you." My mother looked forlornly at my dad lying in his bed. "We really want to do this," I said, taking my mom's hand. "Are you sure?" Mom sighed. "What about your wedding?" "We'll have a church ceremony next spring," I promised. "That would be very nice," Daddy whispered in a hushed voice. Steve went to my dad's bedside and took his hand. "Thank you, Don." I think I saw a tear in both Daddy's and Steve's eyes. We were married on a warm August evening as the sun began to set. I found myself standing at my father's bedside, Steve and I exchanging vows in a moment that was intimate, raw, and profoundly moving. Steve's love for me and my parents was never more evident. Later that evening, I went into my dad's bedroom. "I didn't know how much that was going to mean to me," he whispered. "Me either, Daddy." I leaned down to kiss his cheek. 10 days later, we knew Dad was reaching the end of his life. He lay comfortably in bed, a pale blue sheet covering his thin frame. How long can he hang on this way?" Mommy said worriedly. "Our nurses say that sometimes it helps if you reassure your loved one that everyone is okay," I gently suggested. Turning to my mother, taking her hand, I said, "Mom, would it be okay for me to tell Daddy that he can go?" "Yes," Mommy uttered, holding back tears as she watched our dad, the man she had shared her life with, slipping slowly away. I took a breath. "Daddy, we're all here with you, and we'll be here with Mommy. We'll take care of her for you. It's okay if you need to go. We love you." Within moments, Daddy took his final breath, passing away peacefully with my mother, my sisters, and me by his side. The next few days and weeks were filled with planning for Dad's memorial service, followed by canceling our wedding. Thank you.
Wow, that definitely evoked emotion, Bonnie. Thank you so much for sharing and reading it so steadily. I think I would have dissolved in tears. Beautiful job. So we have 4 writers left, and I just realized that our last 4 writers are all psychologists, and I did not mean to lump them all together, but their professional expertise and writerly wisdom combined for some incredibly insightful creative writing. So first up, we have Jessica Montague. Jessica is a relationship therapist in the Bay Area of Northern California. Her essay, "Perfect Wasn't in the Moment," is a recounting of her wedding in the Redwood Forests and how even waylaid plans can end up being beautiful. Jessica?
Thank you for that, Bonnie. And this is an interesting, it's about my wedding as well and loss. So, okay. The bridal suite was set up in a rickety cabin. Against wooden beams, dusty floors, and by the light of a hanging bulb, I smoothed powder over my cheeks, among my 6 best friends, all donning flowy cobalt blue dresses. I practiced my vows while sipping champagne. "John, I promise to be your constant friend and faithful partner, to honor your independent self and to cherish your uniqueness. I will love you as you are and strive to be sensitive to your needs." My slim wedding body, I'd lost 4 pounds I didn't need to lose in the months prior, fit into ruched off-white raw silk secured by little buttons. In the dress, I felt secure and confident. It helped contain the flurry of feelings inside me like glitter in a jar of water. "Relax, you're doing great, you've got this," the photographer cooed as she snapped pictures of me alone. The photographs turned out terribly, though they revealed a truth, a different picture of perfect. Sitting with what was true, what is real, not a fairy tale bride on a fantasy day. My shoulders clenched, my eyes stared out at the trees. I half smiled and held a bouquet of cream-colored calla lilies. Inside, I felt lonely. I wanted my mom. Sadness draped on me like a weighted blanket. My heart was heavy, my stomach spinning, while I stood like a statue veiled by professional brushstrokes and a custom-fitted dress. Nona always had bad timing, saying inappropriate things to waitstaff, blurting out an apt but controversial statement among strangers, telling us it was great when we visited and great when we left. and now dying the day before my wedding. Death and life share some common traits. They upend perfect plans. Normally, in stressful situations, I cope by not burdening anyone, just keeping it all inside. So I didn't turn to my mother, my aunts, or my brother because they were struggling too. I realize now that I wanted my mom available to me that weekend, as she must have wanted her mom. I was 33, starting my own family. My mom was 63, watching her daughter get married, mourning the loss of her mother, pulled between generations. Despite all of this, the wedding was, in fact, wonderful. Mid-afternoon light faded into a warm night with live music, juicy steaks, and the 165 people I loved most gathered together. Our Scottish officiant recited a poem that moved people to tears. 4 deer appeared during the ceremony. We danced to the music of a band named the Cheeseballs. I got through it by holding John's hands as we exchanged vows. All of my family showed up, and there were a lot of them who were mourning like I was. My brother said conversations during cocktail hour were deeper and more meaningful than at any wedding he'd attended because people were talking about real stuff, the pain of loss and the hope that comes with enduring love. My uncle tapped my elbow. "Jess, go on your honeymoon," he said. "Don't stay for the funeral. Celebrate your marriage." My friends toasted me and my husband, and we danced as we had in college, arms up, booty shaking, making fun of each other, and singing to AC/DC's "You Shook Me" all night long, and anything by Snoop Dogg. My aunts and mom's friends interpreted the late afternoon sunlight as my Nona's spirit shining on us. My husband was convinced that the 4 deer represented our future family. Nona died the morning of my rehearsal dinner. That night, my mother had planned to give a speech. She began by saying, "It's the cycle of life," but could not go on. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I walked over and hugged her. The photographer snapped a picture of our embrace, and it's one of my favorites. My eyes are closed and my head rests on her shoulder, our arms wrapped around each other as if we were holding each other up. We probably were.
Amazing. Thank you so much. You guys are really turning me into a crying mess here. Beautiful. And I've read these pieces. Next, we have Susan Epstein. Susan is a writer and psychotherapist based in Connecticut. Susan's essay, Digging to China, is a nostalgic exploration of her childhood hometown and early identity influences. Susan. Susan, you are muted.
You are right. I am muted. Okay. So I'm just going to read the first half because that's all 3 minutes will hold. So that's what you get. When the sun went behind the rain clouds, we scurried up the beach to the stone wall and buried ourselves up to our necks in the warm sand to wait for the sun to peek out. I grew up in New London, Connecticut, on the Long Island Sound, where summer days stretched forever with ringalivio, kickball, and bike riding until the streetlights came on and we all went home dirty and exhausted. Our days ended with faces washed and teeth brushed, reading bedtime stories, and then falling into the best kind of sleep only tired children can have. Those nights carried the low, mournful call of foghorns, their echoes rising and falling like a lullaby. When my best friend Rhonda slept over, she would always ask, wide-eyed in the darkness, "How do you sleep with all that noise?" The low roll of the foghorns from the sound were as steady and unrelenting as the tide. I would smile and say, "What noise?" I still live in the same town, and last weekend my brother visited for my mom's 97th birthday. He asked, "Did you hear that?" He'd been away for more than 40 years. I still don't hear the foghorns. They are part of the night, as natural as rustling leaves or the faint hum of distant ocean waves. Their call is woven into my days. Just a few blocks from my childhood home stands the New London Harbor Lighthouse, a timeless figure etched against the sky. Built in 1801, it rises a solemn 90 feet, weathered stone bearing witness to countless tides and tempests. At the end of a stretch of private beaches, it keeps watch, steadfast and solitary, a keeper of secrets from a quieter time. The lighthouse was among the first in America with a flashing light, its rhythm dictated by a revolving eclipser, 3 seconds on, 3 seconds off. The pattern ensured it could never be mistaken for the steady glimmer of nearby farm lights, a small triumph of ingenuity over the vast shifting dark. Beaches stretch along the shore, bordered by a mile-long stone wall that seemed to hold the world together like a thread of quiet intention, marking the edge of land and sea, human touch, and nature's endless expanse. During the day, mothers threw beach chairs, umbrellas, and toys over the top of the wall to make the carrying easier. In the 1960s and 1970s, in darkness, the wall transformed from a gateway to children's play to a destination where teenagers gathered to smoke pot, drink Boone's Farm apple wine, and lose their virginity. Anyone who grew up in New London can tell stories. Anyone who grew up in New London can tell the secrets of the wall.
Awesome. Thank you, Susan. Next, we have Kate Rosenblum. Kate is a clinical psychologist and professor in Ann Arbor, Michigan, who is writing a memoir. Kate has 2 pieces in this anthology. So Kate, tell us a little bit about the one that you're going to read from.
Thanks, Lynn. Yes, so I'll read an excerpt from a series that I've been writing that weaves together nature reflection and reflections on illness, healing, and my own cancer journey. So this piece is called Surviving and was previously published on breastcancer.org. Green shoots push through skeletal leaves of last fall, leaving small clumps of soil tumbled to the side. They do not worry about what ifs. In defying predictions of frost, their bulbs underground draw strength from warming soil. I, too, am emerging. 2 years since diagnosis. In the unfolding of scans, biopsies, infusions, radiation, and surgeries now behind me, I'm faced with the possibility that I might be well. When first diagnosed, I was gifted a bracelet from a friend whose mother survived breast cancer. Small pink round stone beads bound by elastic thread framed little white cubes with the letters STRENGTH, strength. It helped my mother, and now you should have it, she said. The bracelet stretched around my hand and fit comfortably at my wrist. For weeks I wore it day and night in bed or on the crackly paper-covered exam table in that awkward patient gown. Yet with each passing day, the bracelet fit less. Not in size. No, the elastic band remained just right. But rather than inspiring strength, the black letters almost seemed to mock me. Be strong, be strong, be strong. Strength was a little engine that could, but was not what I felt. Instead, with fear, nausea, and exhaustion, I was emotionally bare as my head. Strength hearkened admonishments to kick cancer's butt, a battle with winners and losers. Vulnerable and raw, and with treatment stretching ahead, I could only think about my next step. I needed a new word, a mantra, a guide chosen for myself. Now on my wrist, tiny hard gray-blue stones in 10 white cubes, DETERMINED, determined. Despite hope, another frost arrives. Small shoots exposed, their tips turn gray, and the single yellow blossom, heavy with frost, bends towards earth. Determined, it will stand again, petals less firm and worn, yet surviving.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Kate. And last but certainly not least is Mary Lee Anderson. Mary Lee is a clinical psychologist who is only beginning to consider herself a writer. I read that in your bio and I thought, come on, you're such a writer. Mary Lee's essay, Good Enough, is a vulnerable and honest window into one woman's journey to belonging. Mary Lee.
I'm going to read from the middle of this. On the way home from Pana, we spent a few nights at the other grandfather's house, perched high on a cliff above the Arkansas White River. This grandfather wore Sears and Roebuck coveralls in khaki or dusty blue, smoked cigars, and drove so fast down Arkansas back roads that red dirt flew like a tornado around his Cadillac. His wrinkled face and yellow-toothed grin gave hints of the handsome young man he had been. I bounded through his property like a colt let loose from a stable. I once followed a gopher's trail through the sandy yard to the edge of the grass under the balcony to find a copperhead curled up with tongue lashing, ready to strike. I yelled to my grandfather, who grabbed his rifle, took aim from the balcony, and killed the snake with one bullet. He then lumbered down the steps, hung the dead 6-foot snake on his gun, and swung it in front of my face, grinning as he watched my awe. Later in the evening, his eyes turned squinty and mean, and as he leaned forward, raised up from his chair slightly, pointed his finger in my face, and called me stupid for playing an errant domino. Protector or enemy? My confusion about this grandfather remained with me for years until I pieced together collected stories. One story I heard several times was of him driving beside my then teenage mother as she walked home from a movie theater, him yelling insults, her crying and fearful. I later learned from an aunt that my mother's mother often had bruises on her face and that her bright personality faded during her years married to my grandfather. As an adult, I found multiple Dallas addresses for this grandmother in the months following their divorce, making me imagine her running away from him. My mother's feeling of not good enough was deep-rooted into her soul. She worked hard to cover her shame by trying to be perfect. She dressed impeccably, first in clothes she sewed with patterns out of the Vogue catalog, then in clothes she bought at Frost Brothers department store. She vacuumed the green shag carpet every morning and never walked out the door if a single dirty dish was on the kitchen countertop. Despite her best effort, she still wore her not good enough like an apology note pinned to her chest. Dear world, please forgive me for being here. Sincerely, Mrs. Donald L. Anderson. She offered apologies reflexively. I'm sorry when someone ran into her. I'm sorry when my father bumped her hand as she served him coffee. I'm sorry when she had a stain on her blouse.
Thank you so much. Well, I want to give a big round of applause to all of our writers. You guys are amazing. And I think this is just so special to be able to hear your voices with your beautiful words. I encourage everybody to pick up a copy and really, take a look at all these pieces in, one at a time, sit with them and in their depth. Now, we do have a little bit of time if you'd like to ask the writers any questions. So fair game. Anybody like to ask anything? You can just unmute and we'd love to hear from you. Maureen?
I have a question for Mary Lee, because I remember your bowling alley story, Mary Lee. So this is the same mother that goes sashaying down the bowling alley?
Same one. There was lots of parts to her. Keep reading in that essay. She gets funnier.
Just seeing another side of her. That's great. Thanks.
Thanks, Maureen. Thanks for remembering that.
Awesome. Other questions? Anybody? Anyone at all? How many writers here are working on some kind of a collection or book? Want to raise your hand if you are? Anyone? Wow. Yeah. Amazing. 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 Bonnie, did you have a question?
No, I was just raising my hand.
Wonderful. Yes. So we'll have lots more of these virtual launches to celebrate all of you, which sounds amazing. All right. Anybody else have any questions or comments or anything that you would like to ask of the writers before we say goodbye?
I just want to say thank
Lynne.
you. Oh, sorry.
I was just saying thank you, Lynn.
Yeah, same. Same. That's what I was saying. Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you for trusting me with your voices. I'm so proud of all of you. This is so beautiful. So sign lots of copies, give them to everybody that you love because they should be reading your words. So thank you all for being here. Great to see you. Wonderful to celebrate all of your voices.
Thanks again, Lynn.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.